So guys, welcome back to another How to Ruin a Good Walk podcast. This is season 2 and we're episode 3 and we're starting strong. Okay, Josh, this is big.
Seriously big.
Big. We've got a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
2-time major champion.
Yes.
Ryder Cup, well, I'm gonna say it right now, Godfather.
Legend.
Legend. Tony Jacklin on the pod. Thank you so much for joining us.
No worries. Nice to be able to join you. I know you had a rough day weather-wise over there, so...
I mean, that's just what people say is normal here in Manchester, to be fair.
Before we crack on, we have to mention it. So, Tony Jacklin, My Ryder Cup Journey is now out. It's available to buy from all major bookstores, Amazon, and direct from the publisher Pegasus, Elliott, Mackenzie. But before we talk about the book, we're just going to go right back to the start.
Yeah. I just want to say that we've been lucky enough to have been sent the book and read some of it to prepare for this pod. And there are some cracking stories, not only from Tony, but actually from some big people in the golf world, like some of Tony's peers who he's played golf with, past and present. So it's unbelievable. Yeah. Okay, but Tony, we want to start right back at the start, getting into golf. What was your route into golf? Because like if we look at golf now, it's become, even just in the last year, a little bit more accessible. But going back to when you started, potentially like golf was seen as like an elitist sport and potentially wasn't easy to get into.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fluke, I suppose. I was living in Scunthorpe. My dad was a steel worker. I would be about 8 or 9 years old. It was the summer of 1953. So I would be 9. I was born in 44. And the neighbour, our immediate neighbour, came up to my dad one day and said, "Hey, Arthur, I've tried golf today. I think you might like it." And honestly, I remember having the conversation. I was kicking the ball around in the yard, and he went with the neighbour, said to my mother, like, he'd be back in an hour, and of course, 4 hours later.
That's what everybody tells the wives these days, though, isn't it? Yeah, I'll be out for an hour.
Well, I used to go and then pull his trolley and then have a go when we were away from the members' eyes at clubhouse. And I got smitten, and I had nothing else to do, I mean, it was the 50s were sort of... I don't know, there wasn't a lot for kids to do. There wasn't the entertainment, certainly the rest of the day. And I spent my summers and all hours, I was self-taught. And the irony was, I got to 13 years old, 1957, and I was making reasonable headway, with my deliberations. There weren't that many good players in Lincolnshire at that time, even. And the Ryder Cup came to Lindrick, which was in Weiskopf, which is 60 miles away. And my dad said, "Do you want to go?" I said, "Absolutely, I want to go." And that was the first opportunity I ever had to see world-class players, And I was 13 is a very, perfect age to be inspired. And of course, I made up my mind on that very day that this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I went back to the club that night. We got home in time I got 9 holes in and played the best 9 holes I ever played. And basically never looked back after that. It was, I started to develop physically, obviously at 13, and I made good progress. I was playing county golf as a teenager, 15 or so. That's when I left school. Went briefly into the steelworks, but and of course in those days you couldn't just turn pro. I mean, to turn pro you had to go and work for a professional at a club, and there were no clubs in Lincolnshire that could afford assistant professionals, and it meant leaving home, which was a big step. My parents weren't very keen on it, and so I was sort of secretly writing off for job interviews and so on. And I got a job interview at Potter's Bar in 61, it would be then, and late in the year, and I begged my dad to take me down, and for the interview, and I said, you could decide if you don't think it's better than what I'm doing now. I hated being in the steelworks. I'm an apprentice fitter, and it was a miserable existence. And so he drove me down. I mean, there was no motorways. It wasn't just a sort of 2.5 hour romp down there. We were in an old banger of a car, and it took about 5 hours.
Oh, no.
And the Bill Shankland, who was the pro there, was a Aussie tough guy, old rugby player, you know. And he sold a good line, as they say, you know. And my dad swallowed it all. Oh, he'll do well if he comes here, you know. He'll be. And 1st of January 1962, we did the 5 hours again down, and I said goodbye to my parents, and that was me on my way. You know, it didn't take me long to discover I didn't want to be a club pro and looking after a shop and all the rest of it. I did my share of teaching, but it was playing that I wanted, and I kept working hard on my game, and I started to win local things in Middlesex, and I won the you know, assistants championship and Coombe Hill assistants, which is a national assistants, and
I think it's,
and I was on the tour by the time I was 19. So
because going back to when you became an assistant, because I just finished my PGA now, and I think it's changed a lot. Like when you first started, I think when you turned pro, most people did it to obviously be a club pro, but then had the aspiration to teach as well. But that was the only route into playing professional tournaments, wasn't it? And they were very prestigious. Like if we go back to like the assistants championships, the PGA Club Pros championships, these were like big events. And then that was like the way of going further and forwards from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, and of course, you know, money was pretty tight. When I first set out, I didn't, you know, I got a little car, a little Morris Minor I had. And, but I played my first Open in 1963, and ironically at Lytham, where I ended up winning it in 69. But I made the cut in 63, and I had to borrow £5 from one of the members at Potter's Bar to get back to London, you know, on the train. It was, but that was the start. You know, I really, after making a cut at the Open, I never looked back. I fell out with my boss a bit later that year. He wasn't difficult to fall out with, I can tell you, because he was a bully. And but my dilemma was that year having to the winter, you know, because I was playing, as I say. I didn't want to get another assistant's job and have to stay looking after the shop and giving lessons all winter long. I wanted to play golf. So I got a little help from the president of the club. He came to me and asked me what my thoughts were for the winter months. And I knew there was a circuit down in South Africa, 8 weeks of tournament. And I said, I think I want to go down there, because there was no time change. You could just get on the, you know, London to Nairobi, and or Johannesburg, as it were. And he says, how much is it going to cost? I said, £600. He said, okay, well, if I put 200 in and I get the Dunlop people, I was playing Dunlop clubs, he said, but if I get them to put 200 in, can you put 200 in? And I remember I had 347 quid in the bank. Yeah, I can. So that was my first visit down to South Africa. I went down, and of course, I wasn't staying in hotels and things like that. I went down with Peter Green, who's out of Bristol. Peter and I still keep in touch. He's in his late 70s now as well. And we stayed with families and people here and there, and just sort of, you know, scrounge lifts from place to place. And it was my first experience. And it wasn't very successful, I have to tell you, because I ended up winning 35 quid on the whole of the 8 weeks, which was a bit of a disaster. But it was, you know, it was an experience that really, and I hit the ground running the next spring, and that's when I won the Cool Mill Assistance, and I started showing up well in tournaments, and it made a big difference. And I had a successful summer. I mean, I paid my way, paid my expenses, essentially, kept me playing. And then I went to give Mr. Rubens, who had put the 200 quid in, I went to give him his money back. And he says, where are you going this winter? I said, I'm going back to South Africa. He says, it's going to cost about the same, is it? I said, yeah. So instead of taking my £200, he wrote a check for another 100. He says, I'll pay half. That, you know, that includes the 200.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, another 100. And anyway, I went back and I won £1,000. I won the last tournament, and it was, you know, I was off and running, as it were. And by the mid '60s, I was winning events in the UK, and ultimately, you know, I was just going up. I won the Dunlop Masters, of course, in '67, and made the hole-in-one, first hole-in-one on television. And when I was what I thought was good enough, I came to America late in '67, got my tour card.
Why did you make that decision? Why did you make the decision to not to come over to America? Has it always been that place where it has sort of been maybe a little bit above the European tour and money-wise?
It was where the best players were.
Right.
And all I had in my mind was being the best player. I wanted to be, you know, and I knew I had to be where the best players were and play with them and against them to be able to beat them. And got the card in '67. Of course, I was lucky. I mean, I was a quick learner, and I wasn't shy about asking players for practice rounds and so on. I mean, I befriended Nicholas at the '66 World Cup. I was playing with Peter Ellis, and we played against Palmer and Nicholas there, and we became sort of fast friends. During the tour school in '67, Jack was living down the road, and he was always very friendly and amiable. We went fishing and had me over to the house for dinner and that sort of thing. And you know, by the time early '68 came, I got pretty good, and I managed to win the Jacksonville Open. In fact, I won. There was the Florida swing is not dissimilar to what it is today. In '68, you know, we played at Doral, we played Orlando, we played Pensacola in those days. The four places, Pensacola, Jacksonville, of course, which is where I won. And I won the best aggregate for the 4 events, which was the Governor's Cup. But of course, the win at Jacksonville was pretty important in my career, because the last round I was playing with Palmer and Don January. Arnold in those days was Jesus Christ. I mean, you couldn't, you know, the army and all the rest of it. Being able to get that done, playing alongside of him the final day, was huge for me mentally, for my confidence. And, you know, I firmly believe to this day, I don't think, you know, I could have taken the heat to the Open the following summer and got that done if I hadn't. And all sport at that level is really about confidence. I mean, you know, how deep can you dig? How deep can you go? How far can you go? And
what were you telling yourself coming down the last few holes in that first tournament alongside partner? What were you telling yourself?
You can do this, you know, you're as good as these guys. I was playing with them on a daily, weekly basis, and I wasn't shy, as I say, you know. They didn't scare me, you know. I'd put in my mind that if I was going to do this, you know, when I went down to Potter's Bar, I'm going to give it my absolute best shot, because you know, there's no second chance as far well, in those days there was nothing like, you know, I came from a very ordinary background, but my dad was he was an inspiration to me. And he used to say, I know it's a simplistic thing, but he used to refer to Palmer and Nicholas and the like, you know. He said, Tone, they got 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head on their shoulders, just like you. Mm-hmm. The same equipment you got. It's just how you use it. Yeah. And I know it sounds like I say simplistic, but I took that forward with me, that attitude. And I never, I didn't disrespect ever anybody. I respected everybody. But I wasn't fearful of, there was no back off in me, you know, when it came to the competition. And it was fun. You know, the world was my oyster back then. I was playing in Australia, Japan, God knows where, exhausted a lot of the time. That was one of the lessons that I learned probably too late, you know, the importance of mind and body turning up together. Yeah. You know, you might be there, but if your mind's not there, 100% golf won't have it. You know, you've got to be hungry and inspired to play your best golf. So, but I was sort of flying by the seat of my pants, and inevitably mistakes are made, but it was difficult in those days to say no. I mean, much has been learnt since then. I mean, Nicholas obviously was the first best example. I mean, he never played more than 18 tournaments a year, and he focused on the majors. And obviously Tiger learned from him. You know, all of these things are of major import. But Nicholas found out that you can't spread yourself too thin at this game. You have to be ready to rock and roll, you know, and you can't do it 24. I mean, I watched golf now on television, and this Chinese guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he lives in a hotel.
Every day, every week.
Oh, Sung Jae is.
Yeah.
Every week.
Every week, give me a break. I mean, it's not a possibility, but he does. He does it. He's sort of, God knows if he had a sort of proper schedule and guys helping him and keeping him sharp as he needs to be, he might be a multiple winner. But living in hotels is I know all about it. You know,
it's not glamorous, is it? A bit, like, especially like. Do you think though? This is something that maybe you can answer us now. Like, do you think you played all these tournaments, like coming from your background, and you've been given this shot? You just thought, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to take every opportunity I can, and that's why you played them all.
Well, it wasn't so much like that when I was over here. Well, I never lived here then. So part of that was, you know, I was English. My roots were in England. My parents were there. I'd come to America for a month, play 3 tournaments, which is probably one too many, you know, in a month, if the truth be known. I mean, if I was in America, I was playing. Yeah. Then I would be back, recharge the batteries, back again. 2 weeks at home, then back here. So I was back and forth 5, 6 times. Then at the end of all that, it's spring in Japan and Australia. So you're exhausted, and your manager says, there's 10 grand. I mean, it's not the millions that these guys are getting today, but I mean, it was maybe 10 grand or whatever to go to the Australian Open or the like. And so, you're on the plane dealing with, another 10-hour time change or whatever it was, and going through the motions, essentially. I mean, I managed to win one year in Australia, the Australian Dunlop tournament, but, going about it the way I did with hindsight it was crazy. I mean, and it was just the beginning of everything. I mean, now all these guys have got better advice, they've got psychologists and this, that, and the other. My psychologist was Johnny Walker.
Red or black?
After a bad round, I mean, that's all we had, and it was just a completely different world then. And you were obviously trying to do the right thing, and I was always willing to learn from my elders. Arnold was helpful. Jack wasn't that older, but he was helpful. Gary was a bad example because he used to play every bloody week. He could go on an airplane and he'd just put his arms across his chest and fall asleep. Player. I mean, he was, he was a bad example for me. Because it didn't seem to affect him. He could play and keep playing. I wasn't able to do that. I needed to. A best example I have for that is when I won the Open, and that finished on a Saturday in those days. And I met with McCormack the next day, and I said, I need to go somewhere now and chill for a month. He said, forget about it. You got to go to America. It's the Westchester Classic next week, and it's the biggest first prize in golf, 50 grand. And I said, but Mark, there's no more beans in the tin. He said, you want to make money, you got to do these things. And I got on the airplane, I came to Westchester, and I missed the cut, I missed the next cut, I missed the next cut, I missed 4 cuts. Came for a month and missed all. Oh. Why? Because I was exhausted mentally. And of course, the sadness of it was I didn't get a chance to enjoy the win, the victory at Lytham. I was beating my head against the wall, basically, for that month. And it wasn't until, time heals, and September that year, the Ryder Cup came round, and I got my try back and my strength back and my inspiration back. And of course, I played in that Ryder Cup in '69, where it was the concession week, and I was unbeaten. And, all was sort of well again for a while. But that was a tough lesson. I should have actually learned more from it than I did. I should have set it in stone at that point in time and realized, that a bit of R&R is important, is as important as anything if you've got the talent and ability to win.
And just touching on something you said, Tony, you said that you were completely self-taught, and then you went over to America and you learned from the likes of Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus. First thing, that takes unbelievable talent to teach yourself to play golf, because as a club golfer, it's so hard. But then learning.
I know, but my dad was keen as mustard. You can't know how keen he was. He got down to a 4 handicap. He didn't take the game up to his mid-30s. And I had the Ben Hogan book, I had the fundamentals. And I realized very, very early that fundamentals were the key to good golf. Other sports, you can cheat on the fundamentals, but you can't at golf. If you've got, that's why golf course clubs are full of 18 handicap golfers.
Like you.
Like me.
People think they can, I can't prove I'm going to do it like this.
Yeah.
It won't have it. Golf will not have it. And so I was fundamentally, and I had hundreds of hours to spare, so I used to practice, and not that we didn't have the benefit of obviously being able to film it then like you can on your phone today, but I had pictures taken and so on and so forth, and I was a perfectionist. I was determined to get it right, and I used to imagine all those hours I practiced that Hogan was watching, and that he would be critiquing he wouldn't like that one, but Christ, it kept me interested. It kept me. I had a inquisitive mind, and I was, and of course, ultimately, I actually in '67 my first masters. I got my master's invitation when I was in the Far East in Hong Kong. I was playing there and got my master's invite, and I went up to Hogan that week and asked him if I could play a practice round with him, and he said, "Sod off." He actually didn't say that, but he was very nice, and he said, I was with Bobby Cole, and we introduced ourselves and asked him. He said, "Boys, I got a lot of work to do before Thursday, maybe some other time." And then, of course, I managed to win my two majors. And the final major of 1970 was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was there practicing. And Jackie Burke came up to me. Jackie was a lovely man, and I played Ryder Cup in Houston at his course in '67. And he said to me, "Tony, would you like to play with Hogan tomorrow?" I said, "Oh boy, would I?" He said, 10 o'clock. We go at 10. And I got to play with him, and he was it. I'm just telling you, I played with everybody that was anybody, including Byron Nelson. I know Byron was getting up there at the time, but nobody did it like Hogan. He was the best player I ever saw.
Was he like your childhood hero?
Affection. Well, I never had a hero because. But actually, yes. But he wasn't playing.
Yeah.
I didn't hero worship Palmer or Nicholas because I knew I had to beat them.
Yeah.
A major. I mean, I look at one of the best examples I have on that front is Tom Weiskopf, who is a dear friend still, and what a talent he was. I mean, he was what a great golf swing, and I believe he hero worshipped Nicholas because they're both from Ohio. They were both, and they got head to head in Weiskopf could have won a couple of Masters just like that, but Nicholas picked him up the post. And if you've got somebody in your mind that you've put way up there, and you get to win, you've got to beat everybody.
Yeah.
And it's a weakness it would be a weakness to have somebody that high in your mind's eye. Because you've got to crush them. You've got to be able to go in there and be mentally. My teeth were the softest part of my mental approach, I promise. And it's the way it has to be. So I avoided having heroes like that, but Hogan was it. And even today, you know, every generation thinks their generation's it, but and of course today with all this technology and the way everything is, but Palmer rewrote history in the early 60s when he won those 2 Opens in 61, finished second in 60, and then he won and won again in 62. And he had a disciple from, as a scribe, a writer from Pittsburgh who was, and they between them, and Nicholas was just coming onto the scene, won his first US Open in 62. They rewrote the record books. They made the majors it. Mm. The majors weren't it, you know, pre that.
Yeah.
But Hogan won in 53, he never defended. Snead won in 46, he never defended. Yeah. Bobby Locke never played in, I don't know, he maybe played in a handful, 3 or 4 US Opens. You know, the great players, Thompson didn't play in the US Open, didn't like it. You know, he loved, obviously, Britain and all, and traveling the rest of the world. So the feats, I mean, Hogan's feat in 53 of winning three of the 4 majors, and he couldn't get to the other because it was at the same time. Yeah. You know, they had the PGA opposite the last one. And they don't get the credit they deserve, or Hogan didn't get the credit he deserved. I mean, some of the things he achieved were monumental in my view. But suffice to say, beyond that, his technique was the most unique thing about him. I mean, the secret, of course, I mean, I'm sure you know, but the secret that he sort of, it was all about the Hogan secret, you know, what is it? But and it was the lower body fires just before the hands get to the top of the backswing, and he had this incredible lag. You know, he was almost double jointed, like Sergio. Sergio's got that lag, very similar, and the lower body fired just before the backswing was complete. And my, oh my, I mean, the rest was it. It was his weight distribution, his the whole action. It was fantastic. The quality of shots he hit, amazing. Really, really, really was. And I, as I say, I don't think those guys from that era get the credit they deserve.
So Tony, I'd like to just go on to sort of, I know you won in 69 and 70, they were your 2 majors, but the book, it's all, well, majority of it is about the Ryder Cup. Now, you've played numerous times as a player, but obviously as a captain as well. The one thing that I'm dying to know is, okay, because you've had this on both sides of the fence, how do you know you have been picked to play in the Ryder Cup? Is it a phone call? Is it a letter? How did you go about it, and how did you get picked?
Well, it was back then when I played 7 times. It was between 67 and 79. That was the first European match, 79. But it was on the order of merit. You know,
that was it. Just totally.
Yeah, that was it. But they did make exceptions in the early 70s for me being in America, playing the American tour. You know, when I won, for example, at Jackson, I couldn't be in 2 places at once. So, you know, they want the best team. A captain wants the best team. So they made allowances when I was full-time in America, which was about 5 years, from 67 to 72. And then beyond that, they've gone, you know, now it's top 50, this, that, and the other, and there's all kinds of criteria. I mean, in Stricker's case last year, he got 6 captains picked. So, you know, he didn't want anybody slipping through the... And while we're on this subject, the fascinating situations is that, you know, with this new Saudi thing, I'm reading up on it on a daily basis, but if guys are not going to be allowed in to represent Europe or America, it's gonna.
What do you think about it?
Well, Tony, you're answering all my questions. You're answering all.
What do you think of it? Is it good or is it bad?
Well, I mean, you're talking to a guy who I never had $1 million in the bank. You can, if you Google me, it says I'm worth $10 million. I would like to know where it is, please. You know, but you know, I think it depends where you're coming from. If I had a net worth of like Rory has of 150 million bucks, it wouldn't. I couldn't care less about Saudi. You know, and you do what you want.
Yeah.
But I think to guys like Adam Scott is saying, for a start, he says, I like that schedule: 14 tournaments, three rounds, no cuts,
Guaranteed money.
Not yet, but I'm in. Is more or less is. And you've got other guys. I saw Jason Kokrak is having discussions with him because, you know, he wants to retire when he's 44 years old. And if this thing can work for him, why not? My point was that historically, there's only one guy ever been picked for the Ryder Cup who didn't turn up, and that was Tom Weiskopf. And that was 1977, when we were getting our butts kicked every year, and Weiskopf knew it was a one-sided affair, and he decided to go off shooting in Alaska instead of playing for the American team. Beyond that, everybody that's been asked to play has played. And I, as a four-time captain, I can tell you this: the one thing you need to know is that going into that battlefield, you need to know you've got the best 12 players available to you. Yeah. And if the captains coming up don't have that, then it's an exhibition match.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to be reduced to, and it would be a shame because, you know, we've all seen the rise of, you know, I mean, I sure as hell remember what it was like in the 60s and how what it's become to the golfing world. And it spawned the success of, you know, the President's Cup, the Solheim Cup ladies front. So it would be a shame if there's going to be animosity towards players who say, you know, I'm in, I'm going to do what I got to do for myself and my family. It would be going forward. I don't think many people have looked at that Ryder Cup, but it's become a doozy of an event. I mean, it's something that everybody looks forward to, and there's been so much emotion and passion involved in it from players and captains alike. To see that hurt in any way, shape, or form would be very sad for me, because I've experienced when you go through that whole week and you come out victorious. You know, there's a enormous amount of friendships made through that whole thing. It would be sad, but there was a very interesting piece I read today about, you know, Phil Mickelson, who's a friend of mine, who apparently has been, if it's a truth as he says it is, more than anything, it was leverage to get the PGA Tour to do more for the players. And if that in fact is, in fact, he made reference to that. He says, I'm not actually bothered whether it works or not. If it's managed to move the commissioner and do more for the players on the PGA Tour, that's what he maintains it was more about than anything. Well, that's already happening. I mean, he's triggered a number of different things. I mean, PGA have announced, I mean, $20 million first prize for FedEx Cup in 24 or whatever it is, and huge bonuses here, there, and everywhere. And then on Tuesday they had this week a big meeting, and they're reconfiguring the whole thing and involving team things and so on and so forth. So we still don't know all the answers, but it would be a sad old thing if it was going to affect the Ryder Cup and, you know, the way that the teams are picked, or you start making people not eligible to be a captain, you know, at the, you know, twilight of their years, if they're playing years, you know, and you've got the likes of, who knows whether, you know, I think Lee Westwood was the obvious next captain as far as I can see.
Yeah.
But who knows how much influenced by this Saudi thing early on, and same with our Swedish friend, you know, Henrik. You know, they're not, you know, it's gone a bit quiet on the Ryder Cup front, but Donald's looking favourite right now, because Henrik showed an interest in what's happening in Saudi, and even that would, you know, affects an outcome if you start looking at players and saying, well, you can't do this, you can't go there, you can't play in this because you're a bad boy.
Yeah, and I think, like you said,
there's no ways, as far as I'm concerned. They're all competitive and they want the best for themselves.
Yeah. And like I said, Tony, obviously there's been so many amazing moments, and if we're then going to lose that because players are going to play over in Saudi and they can't be picked, that would be extremely sad and bad for the game, in my opinion. But like you've been involved in potentially one of the most famous moments of the Ryder Cup with Jack Nicklaus, the concession. What was going through your head when that happened? Obviously, you had to make that putt to tie, I think, if I'm right.
What was going through my head was I marked it, and he's got a putt to win outright, which he rushed 4.5 feet by. I'm stood there leaning on my putter saying, TJ, whatever happens, you're going to have to make this putt. That's all I was thinking. And he was doing all his stuff. And then, of course, yeah, he held the 4.5 footer. And on his way down, before he picked the ball out, I think he picked my coin up, and I was, you know, shocked and relieved and all the things you can imagine. But, you know, it was a nice gesture. We played in that spirit. It wasn't a war, you know, for us. I mean, we were good friends, but shoot, were we competitive? I mean, I wanted to beat him so bad, and he wanted to beat me too. But he didn't want anything to happen. You know, I'd won the Open a couple of months before, and I guess, you know, Britain had another new hero, and he didn't want anything to happen to spoil that. And I think I would have made it. I mean, it wouldn't, you know, some people make reference to it and say, oh, you gave him a 3.5 foot putt, and it wasn't 3.5.
Go on, how far was it?
20 inches to 2 feet.
That soon gets 3 to 5 to 6 feet.
Well, you can look at YouTube. You can look at it yourself. It was no distance, and I think I would have made it.
Yeah.
But, who knows? I mean, I've had a few seizures since then, I can tell you that. But I was on the top of my game, and I think I might have done it. But it was the gesture, and it was the perspective, and Jack had it all in perspective, and that's what he did best. You know, his mental agileness, his ability to think under pressure, was he knew that America would retain it if he conceded the putt.
Yeah.
A half wins it for them, and he knew that. I mean, there's all kinds of stories, and when a thing like that happens, you know, supposedly Snead was the captain. I mean, and Sam was a pal in the end. We were good friends, but he supposedly said, you know, we didn't come over here to be good old boys, or, you know, but nobody said anything to Jack.
No, he just made that decision.
And he said he would have done it every time. He said, since then, you know, he's read and it's been written about, and he would do it every time because that's the player he was. You know, he had when I think about Jack and the times we played, and neither of us can bloody well play anymore, but that's beside the point. But he had an amateur career, which I never had.
Yeah.
And that amateur career, his dad was, you know, very instrumental in getting behind that amateur career. And Charlie Nicholas, I played with him in 1967 while he was alive. He didn't live to be an old man. And but he instilled those values, amateur values, into Jack when he was young. And you know, he never lost it. It was a bit like, you know, the Jones thing, and, you know, when he called a shot on himself. And, you know, I've seen Jack in world match plays at Wentworth when he would go along with things, but if he thought there was a ruling given that he didn't agree with, he would, you know, I've seen him, I go back a long, long way and things like that. He wouldn't let people bully him. He knew the rules and he played by the rules. And he was a great sport, Jack. He was a great sport. And ultimately, you only want to win. You want to be able to put your head on that pillow that night. And, you know, I waxed everybody today fair.
Yeah.
You know, I did it right. I mean, God knows some of these characters, and we've all heard the stories over the years.
Well, have you seen Bryson? Do you remember Bryson last year in the Ryder Cup, where he put, like, on a similar situation to you, where Jack picked up your marker? His ball was what he deemed gimme length, so inside a putter length. Shoves this putter in the hole, almost to insinuate, like, why have you not given it me?
Measures it out.
Yeah, it's like you're saying there, Jack's competitive, but he's still got that gentleman sort of nature to the game, whereas, I don't know, Bryson maybe doesn't have that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another story, isn't it? I mean, that's assumption is the mother of all screw-ups. Yeah. I was always taught. So I never assumed a putt was a gimme. You know, it's not given until the opposition takes care of it and concedes it. It's not up to you to decide whether the putt should be a gimme or not. It's not your call.
No.
But you know, stuff's going on today. You know, and of course there's so much scrutiny, and there's so much opinion, and this Saudi thing is the best example ever.
Yeah.
You know, filthy money and you know, terrible thing. You know, if you've got 30 million in the bank, of course, you know, you can be holier than thou about it. If you've got no, I mean, these opinions, they come out of the woodwork, and everybody has a different circumstance, and they've got to a certain point in their life where they, you know, they have their own, they've formed their own opinions, and that's the way it should be. But all I know is if it happens, golf professionals would seem to me to be a hell of a lot better off than they are. Now, I don't worry about Rory and these lads who are swimming around in fortunes. You know, I've got a 30-year-old son, Sean, who just finished second yesterday in the Tampa Open. It's a mini tour thing here. He's been trying to get out there for 10 years, and he's playing for peanuts every week. He puts his own money up. These mini tour events, they're paying $250, $300, $350 to enter, and then a couple of grand first prize. He won $3.5 grand yesterday, and that was a big payout for a 2-day mini tour event. But I would like to see some of this money go into opening opportunities for some of these mini tour. There's so many.
Yeah.
Good young players. I mean, good players. And they're teeing it up with Sean every week. Hundreds of them.
Yeah.
He goes to Orlando. He goes, West Florida Tour is the one he plays, which is a mini tour. And there's just no opportunity. One opportunity, he actually qualified on Wednesday to Monday qualify at the Honda next week. The 100 guys last Wednesday for 6 spots.
Jeez.
So they can play on Monday, 100 of them for 4 spots. Entry fee, hotel, and no dough coming in.
No.
I mean, these are the lads that need help. Don't throw another bloody 20 million to Phil Mickelson, who's been making 50 million a year for the last 20 years. They don't need it,
Yeah.
But I just would like to see more opportunities other than the Monday qualifier or the once a year, tour qualifier, where that pressure, you pay $5.5 grand or whatever it is to a couple of bad holes and
You don't.
see you next year. Because, realistically, that's your next opportunity, unless you can shoot 62 and do a Monday, get a Monday qualifier. And then the pressure on them after that is, so I'd like to see a better sort of distribution of these, some of these funds and more opportunities being created.
Yeah. So you had most of your success as a captain. You had the first victory in 28 years when you captained the team. But did you prefer playing or leading? And was it hard to adapt from having played to then leading the team?
Well, to be honest, playing was a bit of a, I won my 2 majors in the middle of my playing years, I suppose, or early part of my playing years. And, it was such a one-sided affair back in those days. America was so much stronger than we were. There's not much fun going into the fray knowing you're going to get beat up.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, that's not been defeatist. It's just been real, And that's why in the book, I think I make a reference to the fact that there was a lot of bravado. Oh, we can do this. Oh, we can beat these. And, what we needed to create, and what I think through my captaincy was created, was a deep-seated confidence that Seve helped inspire. For example, I hope I did. I mean, I was obviously a double major winner, but Seve was somebody everybody looked up to, and it was. We can do this. We can do this. They're human. They're not. They got what? What did I say earlier? They got 2 arms, 2 legs.
2 legs and a head.
It's self-belief. It's just believing you can do it. And once we proved it in '83, we got beat by a single point in Palm Beach Gardens. And I never had a captain's pick that year because they were too busy arguing behind the scenes. Historically, a captain had always been a generation older than the team. And Bernard Langer, I found this out years after. Bernard was insisting that we had a captain that was more in touch with the players and so on. And the things I instigated in '83, that first year, a team room, which we'd never had before, and first class travel and nice clothes to wear. I mean, you don't know, it's very difficult to explain self-esteem when you're wearing plastic shoes and anything anybody would give you to wear, and then you're flying the back of the bus and not knowing who's paying the dry cleaning bill that week. And, you know, no team room, nowhere to sort of sit and gel with your fellow. I took care of those things, and the players responded in kind. I didn't, beyond that, my encouragement was there for them. I made life as pleasurable that way because I could for them, but I couldn't play for them. You know, I wasn't asking. And they dug deep on that front. You know, we weren't all of a sudden 1 or 2 down before we hit a ball, which was the case back in the 60s, I'm afraid, just because of the approach. I mean, John Jacobs, for example, he was a captain in the first European match. I mean, he wasn't a winner, you know. He thought it was more important to turn up and get your ass kicked than it was to win. You know, winning was really, oh, let's not dream. And so I'd had a lot of that attitude during the 60s and early 70s, and I was sick of it. And when I got the opportunity to change things, I did, and we saw the response, and we've been watching the response ever since. It came to a dead halt and went maybe a bit into reverse at Wisconsin, but
yeah,
you know, but that was Stricker being smarter than Harrington in terms of Stricker went in there and said he wanted 6 picks, and he picked all those young bucks.
Yeah,
and they're not frightened anymore.
No. That's gone, hasn't it? That's totally gone. It used to be that thing like you were saying, like potentially some of your peers when they came up against the likes of Jack, Palmer, even Hogan, like not just in regular events, not even the Ryder Cup, they were already 1 down. They were already being beaten. Whereas right now, like these guys, they win US Amateur, British Amateur, and they're already a big fish in a big pond. Like, and they believe it. They believe it as well.
Well, we need these young guys like young Dane, to step up and take the place of the Montgomerys and Poulters and you know, Westwoods. We need that new blood, and you got to get out there and you got to beat heads with them and come out on top. There's no substitute for confidence and experience. The only way you can do it and get it is to go out there in the field and beat somebody who has been beating you, you know, who you didn't think you could beat. And that's how you get better, you know. Then you're not fearful of anybody. There's no end. You've got to reach for the stars when you're in sport. And you only have a certain window of opportunity to do it. This is the thing. And when you're done, you're done. And that's why it's absolutely necessary that these young guys step up while they have the chance and make a name for themselves. But I think we probably need to look at our well, as we've already said, I'm concerned for, first of all, guys that should be in the team not being in it. Yeah. But then the captain having the opportunity to pick whoever he wants, so he knows he's got the 12 best possible, because any weakness you have in that arena is exposed.
And you meant, obviously, you captained some and played with some amazing players, but we can't really talk Ryder Cup without mentioning Seve. What was he like? Like what was he like in the team room? What was he like to like manage as the captain, the leader?
Well, he was a friend. I mean, first and foremost. I mean, when I got chosen as captain or asked to be captain, my first thing was, I mean, they banned him from playing in '81. He was arguably, when my mouth works, the best player in the world in '81, and they didn't field him. And such was the attitude, like I say. I mean, what are you in it to win, or are you in it to turn up?
Yeah.
And when I accepted the captain's role, my first job was I went to Lord Derby, who was the president of the PGA, and I said, "What about Seve?" He said, "Well, you're the captain. He's your problem." And of course, he was my first stop. We had breakfast, at the Prince of Wales in Southport, where he was playing that week. That was within a week of me accepting the job, and he vented for 10 minutes, telling me what a bloody shower they all were. And I said, "Seve, you don't have to tell me. I know, I'm older than you are, and I've seen it for longer than you have." It was a mess. That whole back room thing was terrible. And I said, "But I've accepted the captain's job, and I can't do it without you." Yeah. And I think between us, we know that we can get it done. I mean, I said, "You're a winner. I like to think I'm a winner. But we've been going about this thing the whole, a lot of it the wrong way around. And I'm putting everything in place to give us every chance possible to get it done." And in the end, he said, "Okay, I help you." And he did. I mean, he was fantastic. I mean, I could be outside the team room with him. And that was by the way, that was the first night we were in that team room in '83. I said to all the guys, I said, "Look, we're all in this together. And there's a hanger outside this door. If you've got an ego, put it on that hanger before you come in this room, because we're all equal in here. You need anything, you come to me. Let's talk about everything. And got a problem with anything, come to me with it, one-on-one." And that was, we had that going forward. But I could say to him, go over there and give him a shoulder rub and tell him how well you think he's swinging. In a team like that, there's always greater and lesser men. You're not going to say, he's better than him or this, that. You're not going to point that out. But as a sort of captain, looking over an overview of the team, who your strong personalities are, and who are the weaker ones. And he would step forward all the time and "Oh, I see you swing today. Huh? You hit the ball good, huh?" He's giving them giving them that a drip feed of confidence. Yeah. And he was, his greatest attribute, as far as I'm concerned, was his courage. He was one of the most courageous players I've ever seen. I mean, he was an ordinary player. When I say that, I don't mean that in an insulting way, but when he got excited, the thing would, he recommended all the fairways should be 3 foot wide, and then everybody would have to play at the rough like he had to. But his big thing was never say die. That wonderful confidence he had, and he was a supreme chipper and putter. He was a courageous player, and it was a privilege to know him, and that journey we had together in the 4 years I captained him were just it was monumental.
So, Tony, it's got a couple more questions for you here. And this is one that I picked up. In chapter 18, you say golf has become boring for you now. Why is that? Do you not like playing? Do you not play at all? Why is that?
Well, I try to play, but it's horrible. I mean, got no, my body's not supple anymore. I could do to lose 30, 40 pounds, but that's not the main thing. I'm not as supple as I was, so I can't get a club back. You know, and age, I'm 77, 78 in the summer coming up. So I'm not that bothered about playing anyway. You know, it's too hot here in Florida in the summer. I'll be over in the UK for a bit, but I don't want to play golf. It's demoralizes me because I can't hit shots that I used to hit. And, but the reason I don't watch it is it's boring. I mean, they're hitting 9 irons and wedges into 11, 12 holes around. I mean, what the hell is that about? I mean, we were hitting 4 irons into par 4s on a regular basis.
Doesn't happen now. Doesn't happen.
Well, nobody wants to do anything about it, and you know, they're throwing money at them. I mean, at the sharp end of the game for just it's smash and grab. You know, I mean, there's no finesse. There's no the commentators make out that he's in the fade in here or drawing, not like you used to with an old ball, and you know. So there's a sameness about it. It's just a guy, you know, the whole putting surfaces are perfect. You can tap spike marks down. I played my whole life with 1 year we had in Europe where you could tap spike marks down. And a couple of them were taking advantage of it by making bloody trenches up to, you know, at me. So they stopped it. But you know, all these rules are soft on rules. You ground your club in hazard. But it's not called a hazard now. It's called a penalty area. I mean, it's.
What can they do about the distance factor?
But the USGA and the R&A have screwed up. They led the, you know, they haven't kept the reins on it, and they've been afraid to step in, do anything about the ball. Arnold was screaming about the ball going too far 10 years before he passed in 2016. Jack's never stopped screaming about it. They don't want to know. And they think it's better that everybody hits it 350 yards. Well, that young people, you know, up until 3 years ago, you know, I was hitting 7-iron the same distance I was hitting it in 1967. It's just this last 3 or 4 years that I've had not had the ability to get the club far back. So it's disappointed me immensely how they've not taken care of these issues with equipment and the ball. And then don't tell me that it's just because they go to the gym all the time. That's John Daly never went to a bloody gym in his life, and you know, you've got all these. Some players do, and some players don't. It's the golf ball.
Yeah.
The golf ball goes 50 yards further. You know, Jack. I can vouch for everybody. Weiskopf, 67, 68, late 60s. Everybody hit a 7-iron. 150 yards, 8-iron, 140. Weiskopf and Nicholas had the advantage with the longer clubs. They could hit it higher. You know, at Augusta, they could hit 3 irons and 2 irons and 1 irons high and stop them on those greens still. But that was, we all hit the ball the same. It wouldn't go any further with the Bellata ball. Now they're hitting the 7-iron, 180, 190 yards, 5-iron, 240.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. There's no par 5s anymore.
No.
There's no artistry about the game. There's the
That's
artistry,
all right.
the artistry of the game's gone. So
Of course it has. I mean, I mean, if what DeChambeau is doing is supposed to be golf, you know, I mean, he's not going to be able to. I mean, apparently he's going to be the front man for this Saudi deal. I don't know. But if he plays into his mid-30s, he'll be lucky. I mean, you
won't be able to move.
You can't do what he's doing and expect not to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as hard as he can possibly go. Give me a break. But, you know, what do I know? I'm old. It's a shame the way it's gone or been let go, and there's so much money involved now. A change of the rules and you know, the thing's escalated into something that's just unstoppable. I mean, they keep throwing money at it. The exposure you get on TV for your sponsors and the rest of it is I actually enjoy the women's game as much more than I do the men. I think, you know, these days, I mean, there's been a bit of growth there. They've been doing a good job with you know, with pushing the ladies tour, and Mike Wan, who's now in charge of the USGA, he's not had much chance to do anything yet there, but he did a hell of a job with the LPGA when he was the top man there. He's a good man, and I suspect that he may be trying to do and bring things into play that will take care of some of the issues, but the ball's a central issue. Mr. Akushnit has been running golf for the last 20 years, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Okay, Tony, final question that I want to ask you here is, if someone bought the book, what would you say is your favourite chapter? So what is like the one thing they've got to make sure they read?
Oh, God, I don't know. I think we've touched on so many things. It's mainly Ryder Cup, as you say, the journey I had, but the people I met and that formed my opinions. You know, I never had an education. I left school at 15. I could read and write, and that was about it. But golf was my university, or where it took me, became my university. You know, traveled around the world so many times. And it was, you know, in the early days, we couldn't afford hotels. We'd write ahead of time, stay with family, golfers, members of clubs that we were playing at, that sort of thing. That was a huge part of the adventure. And I think more than anything, you know, it was an adventure. It conveys that there was an amazing adventure there. So many wonderful times, you know, playing with royalty and playing with presidents of countries and companies and God knows, and anybody that was anybody, you know, whether it was Dean Martin or Frank Sinatra, great people of the time. I met them all, you know, so the adventure was central to it all to me, and obviously the lessons I learned from a lot of those wonderful folks I met. It's that was it. There's no one chapter that other than, you know, the comparisons of what great is. You know, like I say, I would put my right hand up in a court of law and say that Hogan was the best player I ever saw.
Yeah.
I never saw anybody better. I played with anybody better than him. And just because, and my dear friend Jack accumulated 18 majors. I mean, just very quickly to close this, but he played in 160 majors, Jack. Gary Player played in 151. Arnold played in 140 some odd. I actually didn't know this, but I played in 41. Hogan played in 27 and won 9.
Jeez.
Hello. So, yeah, and you know, all Jack did every year he played was focus on majors. The week before, he took off to practice. He played the major. So 18s, he made a hell of a dent in, you know, and I'm not taking anything away from that, but the percentage, when you think you played 160 and devoted everything to
just those events,
anyway, I'm just trying to put things in a perspective for you. I think the old timers don't get the accolades they deserve, especially Hogan. I think Hogan was it, period.
So we have to tell everyone again, this book is out. Tony Jacklin, My Ryder Cup Journey is available to buy Amazon, all bookstores, and directly from the publisher, Pegasus, Elliott, Mackenzie. Go and get it.
Yeah,
honestly,
100%.
I have done some research on this, skimmed the book, and it will be getting fully read because some of the stories are just amazing.
I think we just touched on them.
Yeah, we don't. I could literally sit here, Tony, and talk to you for hours.
I feel like I've just listened to like some of the best golf stories I've listened to.
Yeah. We've been going nearly an hour and a half.
I know. We won't take any more of your time.
Before we let you go, we ask every guest on the podcast, we ask them the same question. What is one quick, simple tip, and I think I know where you're going to go with this, that you would give to people like me, amateur golfers, to work on, to make them better?
Tempo.
Yes, I said it. I said you'd say that. I watched the video of when you won at Royal Lytham, and the person who interviewed you asked you, what were you thinking on that tee? And I've forgotten what player you referenced. Someone left you a note in your locker of just saying, tempo, and you were saying this in your head, so I went, right, Josh, I know what that answer to that's going to be.
At Hazeltine, Weiskopf wrote tempo on my locker at Hazeltine, and I knew immediately who'd written it, because that's what we worked on. And I can tell you that tee shot on at Lytham, not at, we're not talking about Hazeltine in the US now, but at Lytham, I stood on that last tee and I said, TJ, this is what you've dreamt of. And the thought was wide and smooth. And as I was saying it to myself, I was doing it. And I looked up and, you know, it was thankfully straight down the middle. What a corker, as Henry Long said. But tempo, good tempo. And I'm guilty now because I'm old and I can't get the club back. What's the first thing I do? Because I know I can't get the club back, where I rush.
Yeah.
You know, you rush to try and make up for, subconsciously, you rush. You've got to use your imagination and visualization, and when you stand over it and try and make as nice wider arc as you can. Width is power. And but you know, I'm so limited now. Bloody ugly game I've got, but never mind. But I if I never play again, I've had 1,000 wonderful times at it.
Yeah, 100%. Tony, thank you so much for your time.
Yes,
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good to see you, lads. I hope you can stand up when you get outside.
Probably not.
Yeah, not sure. Thanks, Tony.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.